Hello guys, this is Shivraj. I'm from GMT Academy. So this session would be on net assets value of hedge fund and mutual fund. So I'll try to decode net assets value through this short session. I'm sure this session will add huge value in your knowledge, or if you're like fund accountant, or maybe you're looking for a fund accounting jobs and all. So this session will help you to even crack your interview as well, like to understand the different aspect of net assets value and all. All right. So let's start with the discussion and to see how net assets value works and why net asset value is important. First of all, let me tell you, if you ask me like, so what is net assets value? Here we are talking about net. Net, it means after deduction of expenses. Here net asset, it means after deduction of expenses, after deduction of liabilities, after deduction of cost, what is the net assets value of my investment? Because in a fund business, what happened, investors, they transfer funds to the asset manager or fund manager, you can say, right? When they transfer funds to the asset manager or fund manager basically manage the funds. But when they manage the funds, of course you would see certain expenses which will incur, right? Again, if I take your example, you guys will work as a accountant. You'll work as a, let's say, Recon analyst, trade processing analyst, pricing analyst with XYZ fund, right? He will not do the work free of cost, correct? He will charge your fees, he will charge your you will expect salary and all. How you receive that salary? Can you think? Just think about it, then you will realize, okay, so it means companies, fund management companies are hiring you as an accountant to manage that fund. So it means they are paying you salary and all. If they're paying you salary and all, of course they'll charge expenses, right? They'll charge some cost. Cost to whom? Cost to investors, cost to the fund, cost to the AUM. AUM, it means asset under management, right? We'll see that what is AUM, how that AUM works and all. We'll see that as well. But yeah, so AUM, it means asset under management of that particular fund. So now here question is about how we calculate the total net AUM or asset under management or total net assets value of the fund, right? Value, we are talking about value. Value, it means fair value. Fair value of the fund. How we can calculate it? What are the rules, or what is what how we actually calculate, or maybe how we consider the expenses and all, or maybe what are the different factors which affects on the net assets value of the funds? Is it subscription, is it redemption, or maybe let's say if I take the example of corporate action, stock split, reverse split, will they affect on net assets value of the fund? Yes, no, right? We'll see that all the aspect and see if that helps you to understand NAV in details or not. Yeah, meanwhile you can of course click on like button and even share this content with others as well. All right. So let me take you ahead. What is net assets value? So you may expect question around it. So if you see any question as such, see, if you are a fresher, then of course you can tell like NAV, it means funds total assets minus funds total liabilities divided by number of outstanding shares. But if you are experienced one, so see, they are not expecting this plain formula or rule from you. They'll expect as a NAV NAV analyst, or maybe let's say end-to-end accounting, or let's say if they ask what is net assets value, it means they're expecting something else. Something else, it means how we compute the total assets, how we compute total liabilities, how we calculate payables, receivables, then total investments, total assets, total liabilities, total capital through capstock activities and all. How we compute that, and then how we conclude, or let's say measure or compute net assets value of the fund, right? So they're expecting that, and apart from that, of course, you should add the how as a fund accountant we charge management fees and incentive fees and how we apply it in the books of account, they're expecting that level of expertise from you. So if you are experienced one and if you only quote, let's say NAV, it means total assets minus total liabilities, this will not work. It will create a very bad impression on panel. And so that's what, if you're a fresher, of course you can go ahead with this formula, total assets or net assets divided by number of outstanding units and all right. So net assets, it means, what is net assets in fund? Net assets value, the significance of NAV for us is we buy units. So it means as investors, we buy units of mutual funds schemes at a current market price, or current, I would say, price of that particular mutual fund units. Like share price, that share price, right? Share price which is listed in stock market, correct? But that stock market price or stock price which represent the value of that particular company or valuation of that particular company, am I right? But in a fund, that mutual funds or hedge funds units represent the value of total funds value. All right, so it means each unit represent the total value of a fund. But the similarity of NAV and share price, both are different, so you can't compare with each other, because mutual fund units unit holders, they will not receive any voting rights, but shareholders, they will receive voting rights, right? So there are other benefits as well, you would see between mutual fund unit holders and the shareholders. Shareholders are different one, mutual fund holders are different one. Mutual fund unit holders represent, or that they hold the ownership in mutual fund or hedge fund, but the shareholders, they hold the ownership in company along with the voting rights and different features as well, right? I hope now you got the idea about what is NAV. NAV, it means it's just a net assets value of that particular fund after deduction of funds liabilities and even expenses as well. We'll see that we have couple of examples we have covered in this particular session, but I'll just quickly walk you through what happened. Let's say you have a mutual fund here, or maybe let's say hedge fund. You have a hedge fund here, means for hedge fund house is, let's say Blackstone. You're investor, right? If you want to buy units, you can directly approach to the Blackstone house. You can submit your proposal, with your price, or let's say your investment capacity or investment amount. So once you invest, of course they'll create a, let's say, GMT hedge fund, right? So they'll ask you to invest in GMT fund. So as an investor, you can transfer that amount, right? Once you transfer that amount, so basically Blackstone fund manager, that manager will utilize that amount and invest in different sectors, let's say banking sector. So that's their story basically. Then let's say IT, or you might see any other sector as well, manufacturing. So basically my point is, let's say in IT they have invested in bonds, in manufacturing they have invested in shares, and let's say in banking they have invested again bonds. So ultimately funds will invest in investors will invest in AMC, so basically in fund, and fund manager so will utilize funds cash to invest in different different types of financial instruments like equity, bonds, debentures. When they invest, see, all instruments offer different things. Bonds offer interest payment, shares offer gain, and as well as dividend as well. So basically that will add in your portfolio's value. So for example, let's say investor invest 10,000, and that 10,000 it was received here, and let's say that 10,000 fund manager invest in bank sector, 2,000 here and 3,000 here. So basically this money will grow, and even this money also it will grow. Once that money grows, then ultimately funds assets also grows, and if that assets means funds total value grows, So ultimately investors money, or let's say units, whatever units that it was received at the time of investment, so units also it will grow. So ultimately, so if you see, investors investing money in funds, and fund is investing money in stock market, and stock market or bond market, see, always that carries upside and downside risk. If market goes up, fund will, of course, fund will grow, and if market is that instruments or market goes down, your NAV or net assets value of the fund will go down. For example, let's say it was invested 1 month back, and now there is a loss of this value, means stock market value is, which is it was invested 2000, but the current value is 1000. So you would see that will affect on the fund's value. So net assets value it would be 9000, and same if you see units value also it will be affected. So basically, if you ask me like what will affect on the net assets value of the fund, now I hope you got the idea about how that market or market risk that create direct impact on investment, right? So if you see the change in price, that will affect on the net assets value of the fund. If you see the change in the income, that will affect on the market, that will affect on the funds net assets value. If you see the expenses goes up or high, that will create impact on the net assets value of the fund. So you would see expenses and income and gain and loss, which is directly represent the funds exposure, so that will directly create impact on the net assets value of the fund. All right, so I'll take you ahead and see what is. So here if you see the here mutual funds creates units. How they creates units? See, first of all, let me tell you the secret. Initially, let's say first time if you are launching your funds and if you create units, see, there is no rocket science, and even there is no, I would say, any method so which can define how much should be the units and all. So it depends. It means you see it how much units that you want to create. Let's say initial mutual fund size or hedge fund size is, if you have, let's say 10,000 or maybe let's say 1 lakh. So you decided how much units that you want to create. Let's say you have decided to create units of 10,000. So it means per unit price is 10 rupees. So this is how you can create units. So now your question would be like, so how did you consider this 10,000? As I said, there is no rocket science. There is no any certain rules or regulations which defines to take this amount or take this quantities and all. You can take any quantities. Instead, this you can take this quantity as well. So initially, so it's a book building process. It means you said how many units that you want to create. Simple. As a fund manager, it's a responsibility of fund manager to set up a units or to create a units. And once you create the units, that you can fix it out. If it is a closed-end schemes, in case of open-ended schemes, of course you can add as much as you can. So it's an ongoing process, because in case of open-ended funds, open-ended and closed-ended, I'll later on I'll cover that part, what is open-ended and closed-ended. So in case of open-ended, so a scheme will open and then investors will continuously come in funds. So in case of mutual funds, it every month investors subscribe some units or invest some amount in funds. So it means every month that fund vehicle will receive subscriptions. So that's what fund can accept it and even invest it. All right. But yes, so unit plays very crucial role, so that you need to understand what is unit and all. As I said here, in this case, we will have 1 lakh units in the fund. So let's discuss that what is units in the fund. Hence, to understand NAV, we must first understand units, right? What are units and what is net assets of mutual fund? So let's discuss that. Unit, it means each mutual fund or even hedge fund schemes is divided into many units, right? Each units represent single shares of the mutual fund or hedge fund, you can say, at the time of NFO. So what is NFO? You can try to post this in the comment section, or I'll cover that in next session, because first you try at least try to answer few questions. So that's how you can prepare for an interview as well, right? What is NFO? you can post that your answer in comment section. Units are offered to the investors at the time of offer after the NFO is closed, right? One can buy and sell the same units at its NAV price, not applicable for close end. So as I said, so in case of open-ended funds, it is allowed to sell the mutual funds for each fund units at current market price. So whatever price should be, so it's like a shares again, right? Shares that you would see now, Tata Technology launched their IPO. You can participate in shares, and later on you can sell up, buy and sell that shares even in market at current market price, whatever current market price would be. So you can sell out or buy out that shares in the market later on. The same logic you can apply it here as well. So later on means in case of open-ended schemes, you can easily buy and sell the units in the market. All right. So let's go ahead. Suppose you invest, now take the example, suppose you invest 15,000 in a mutual fund. All right. So which is available at per unit price, which is 15. So how many units you will get upon investing? So current market price of the particular, let's say, mutual fund is 15 rupees per unit, and you have decided to invest 15,000. So let's calculate it. 15,000 divided by 15 rupees, so that would be around somewhere 1,000 units, so that you will receive, right? Just do it. 15,000, which is investing amount, and 15 rupees, if you calculate, it would be around 15, so 1,000 units which will receive to you. All right. So that units you can of course accept in your demat account. If your demat account or investment account, that will receive directly in your accounts. And units represent the mutual funds value, as I said. So the calculation or the formula is, so you may expect again question around it. What is how you can calculate number of units, how you can calculate investment value. As I said, if you have decided to invest 15,000, then price for unit, divide with price per unit, so you will have total 1,000 units. So this is how you can calculate units in your mutual fund. Why fund creates units? Again, you may expect question around it. Why fund creates units? See, units represent ownership in funds or schemes. Units are easy to allocate to different partners. If you don't have a units, see, there are two types of funds even. One is unitized funds and another one is that commitment or capital based funds. All right, that is a different discussion, but yeah. So if you have a units in place, so that easily you can allocate units to the each partners or even investors as well. Units can be transferred or list on a stock exchange as an ETF. So you would have heard about ETF. ETF means exchange traded funds. So which is listed on a stock exchange, which can easily means units can be easily buy and sell in ETF as well, or it can be listed on a stock exchange as well. If you list it, that becomes your ETF, exchange traded fund. And if you don't list, so it means you can buy it through AMCs or brokers. Units can be disposed after redemption. So units, it can be again disposed as well. And most of open-ended funds comes with unit-based structure only. So this is how units, or this is why I would say fund creates units for a better representation of each and every investors in the that particular schemes. Same example, if you see with the normal companies, comes with shares. What if let's say there are thousands or lakhs of investors are interested to invest in XYZ company, but that company has no shares or unit based structure, then how investors will invest, right? That becomes again difficult, and that's what company actually split company's assets value into small units, and then that company offer small units to the investor. So that becomes your basically shares. So similar way here also, if fund manager want to split funds total, but here again investors are investing and same amount investors amount, here fund manager will split it, and that amount it will allocate as a units to the each investor's account as per their investment portion. In this example, if the investor invests 15,000, so investor will receive 1,000 units. So that 1,000 units will represent the value of 15,000. And if you see change in the mutual funds due to maybe expenses, due to maybe subscription and redemption, maybe that market change or market price, then this will affect on investors total investment value also. All right, so I hope now you got the idea about why we create units and how we create units. So this is the formula, investment value divided by price of units. So note it down somewhere. So definitely you may expect question in your interview process. All right, so let's take the example. So we have discussed above example as well, but discuss in this example. So let's take the example. The fund manager of ABC commits 10 lakh in stocks, or 20 lakhs of stocks B, again 20 lakhs of corporate bonds and 20 lakhs of government bonds, and 5 lakhs of stock C, or you can say 10 lakhs of stocks D, 10 lakhs rupees cash which is in derivatives, and 5 lakhs of treasury bills. So this is all about total investment, right? And finally mutual fund carried some liability as well, 10 lakhs rupees liabilities. 10 lakhs rupees, it means basically liabilities, it means expenses, fund expenses. It can be fund managerial expenses, it can be audit, legal, or any other expenses that you can say. It can be any expenses. Any means any expenses. All right, so if you see any expenses as such, so it's fund's responsibility to calculate that expenses for that particular period and ensure that fund is debiting all those expenses. And as a fund accountants, so it's become your responsibility to actually calculate expenses and apply it before computing net assets value of the fund. All right, so you will have to track out each and every penny of expenses and even liabilities before applying to it. So now in this example, as I said, so all investment in different stocks or bonds and debentures, that becomes your assets, and you have 10 lakhs rupees liability as well. So see this, therefore ABC fund total value stands at 10 plus 20 means all assets you can add it, then minus 10 lakhs which is liability. So net assets should be 90 lakhs. And now let's see, 90 lakhs, assume that at the end of the 22nd June the number of units holders stood at 1 lakh. So it means you have 1 lakh units. All right, so just compute that net assets value for per unit. 90 lakhs divided by 1 lakhs, per unit's value would be 90. So 90 rupees, that value, it will be again updated on certain sites like broker sites, or maybe let's say AMC site, so that each investor can compare their investment with the current market price of that particular funds per unit value. So that's how you would have invested in mutual funds, right? So go and check it every day, that mutual funds value will change. Or maybe even though if you have invested in hedge funds, go and check it every day. Maybe monthly, you would see in a hedge fund, basically we do calculate NAV on monthly basis, so you might see change on a monthly basis as well. All right, so let's take the again and try to understand other aspect as well. Let's use this previous example, it means above example. If you see, for a better understanding, right, at the end of the 22nd June 2020, ABC NAV is stood at 90, or was 90, let's say. This was the NAV. For example, let's say there is one person, or maybe you can take your name, Ashok puts in order. So here this statement is very important, right? So let's say you are Ashok, and Ashok puts an order of 9,000 on 23rd of June, right? For example, let's say if you send order through broker today to purchase the mutual fund units, then what price you will receive, right? Let's say on 22nd, that it, where we have calculated 22nd June, the price is 90 rupees, right? Price is now 90 rupees. Same price you have checked it on, let's say broker side or maybe AMC side, and send order with the price of 9,000 rupees investment, because you wanted to, or you decided to buy the mutual fund units, or invest basically in mutual funds. All right, but you send that order on 23rd June. by the listed NAV, Mr. Ashok should be able to procure means 100 mutual fund units. But here is the catch, right? So on 22nd June, price was 90 mutual fund, same price that Mr. Ashok checked it and sent it to the broker or AMC to book the mutual fund units with the price of 90. But let me tell you, if you send the order today, right, but today's NAV is yet to calculate it, right? How can you then buy that units? Are you getting my point? So let's say if you send order today, let's say today is 23rd, right? Today is 23rd, and if you send the order today only, but today's NAV is yet to calculate it. So how will you receive that NAV? Whatever NAV that you are saying, this is previous day's NAV that you are saying today, right? So you cannot buy that NAV. So ultimately today's NAV, it will be calculated after the market close, and that's what here if you see Mr. Ashok will calculate NAV like 9,000 divided by 90, it becomes 100 units, and he'll expect 100 units, but which will not receive it. However, at the end of the 23rd March, let's say 23rd June, the price increased to rupees 92. Therefore, if Mr. Ashok invests 9,000, so he will be acquiring only 97 units. Why not 100? Why 97? Because calculation would be like this: 9,000, which is investment value, divided by 92, which is per unit price. Calculated 9,000 divided by 92, so that becomes around 97.8 total units, so that Mr. Ashok will receive. So this is how your market also works it. It's very important. So you may see this question in your interview process also, and I hope now you got the answer. If you purchase NAV today, you will not receive NAV in your books of account by today's price. No, it will not, because today's NAV is yet to calculated. It will be calculated after the market close. Once the market close, NAV will be calculated, and then all subscriptions request will be checked out and confirmed to all across all the platforms, brokers, or maybe stock exchange, or you can say different platforms and all, and then only they'll confirm it. Yes, your units has been confirmed in that way. All right, so let me take you ahead. We have a lot of information to discuss. Then what about net assets in fund? What about net assets in fund? Net asset, it means, see, total assets minus cost, that becomes your net assets. In fund schemes, portfolio is composed of different types of assets. Typically, like if I talk about mutual fund, consists of stocks, bonds, deposit. Same applies for hedge fund as well, right? And together the current market value all the individual securities from total assets of the scheme, so that represent total assets, and total assets minus cost, that will give you net assets. So net asset is important, right? What are the cost? It is the expense incurred by the mutual fund to run operations, and this cost can be fund management charges, advertisement, regulatory expenses, and other like incentive fees or management fees that you would see in hedge fund, right? When all the cost is deducted from the total assets of the mutual fund scheme, what remains balance is called net asset. Note down this one. Please stop this video and note down this one if you are preparing for any fund accounting interview. Same logic you can apply it in hedge fund as well. There won't be any change as such. Same logic or same rules you can replicate in hedge fund also. All right. How net assets of the company will change, or it will change in the following conditions. See this, means in which case funds assets will change. Total assets here we are talking about. In which case, see, we are not talking about NAV per unit. We are not talking about that. NAV per unit is different, and net asset which is different, right? Net asset, it means total assets of the fund. So in which situation your total assets will change. And see, if you're looking for any interview as such, this becomes very important to understand, because BNY's team, they definitely ask question around this. even NT and Apex or Sitco, if you sit for that interviews, they'll definitely ask question on this part. So note down this one. All right. In case of new transaction cap and stock, your net assets will change. Net asset. See, as I said, net total assets and NAV for per shares both are different thing. Cap stock activity, it will not create any impact on NAV for per unit, but cap stock activities, it will create impact on net assets. Your net assets will increase because cash will in, and that's what your total assets will in. So we'll see that, right? So your cap stock activities will create impact on net assets. When market value of securities means capital gain change, like capital gain or loss, if you see any change in the security price, that will affect on the net assets. When securities earn income or dividend or interest payment, with exceptions, right? So you would see change in the total assets. When expenses and losses are booked, if you booked any expenses and losses, that will change your net asset position, right? Note down this one so that you can answer it in your interview process. New transactions. New transaction, it means when people buy units, cash balance of this balance of the scheme will go up, right? When you received subscription, ultimately cash will come in, and that will change your net assets, and in this case net assets will go up. When people sell the units, cash balance of the scheme will go down, and in this case net assets will fall. So it means subscription and redemption will affect on the net assets of the fund, but not net assets value for per unit. All right, don't mix both the terms. Don't mix it. Market value. Suppose the portfolio of mutual funds or hedge funds has scheme has stocks of TCS in its portfolio. If the TCS price goes up, net assets of the fund will go up. If the TCS price falls, then ultimately your net assets will also change. Income. Suppose portfolio of the scheme includes stocks of TCS and bank deposit as its constituents. So when TCS will pay dividends, net assets of the scheme will go up, and when the bank deposit bank deposit will pay interest, net assets again goes up, because income and interest payment, it will add balance, or it will, your cash will increase basically. So and cash, which is the part of assets, so your total assets will increase. Again, see, income will affect on NAV for per units or not, that is a different discussion. So don't mix up that. I'm talking about only net assets, not the NAV for per unit. Then expenses. Whenever you book the expenses in the fund book, ultimately your net assets will go down, right? Whenever you book the expenses in the fund, your net assets will go down. And yes, with that said, I would say I'm sure here you would expect lots of technical questions, so that you can note it down, do practice, and then you can note down as well, so that you can prepare with the example if you can. So definitely you would expect all these questions in your interview process as well. All right, so let me take you ahead. Net assets value. Net assets value is calculated using the below formula. Net assets value, it means net assets divided by number of units. How net assets value of the schemes will change? With every change in the net assets, there must be change in NAV, right? Not always. How? Let's try to understand this this with example. Suppose there is a fund whose net asset is 10 lakh and the number of units outstanding are almost 10 lakhs. So 1 crore and 10 lakhs. My bad. Right. At this point in time, if you see what will be the NAV of this fund. So total assets you have and total units. So NAV of the per share would be 10. So now suppose the market value of the securities in the schemes portfolio goes up by 2 lakhs, 25 lakhs basically. So it means what will be changed? Of course, this price will change, right? So we'll see that whether it will change or not due to gain. See, total assets which has been changed, and even this affected on the net assets value, NAV for per share. So this is basically per share. So it means capital gain directly create impact on NAV. Alright, even expenses also create direct impact on NAV. So see this total before gain, what was the NAV, and after. So see that how it looks like and how it has been changed. Right, suppose investor redeems units, so that's the difference one. But yes, so basically your capital gain creates impact on NAV. Right, initially it was 10, but post addition of gain of 25 lakhs, so NAV has been changed. If I take the another example for redemption, whether redemption creates impacts or not, just see this. You have received redemption of 1000 units, right, with price of 12.5. Same example we are continuing with redemption as well, right? So what will be effect of this transaction on the NAV? So what do you think? Will this impact on per shares NAV? Per share NAV, which is different, as I said, per share NAV, which is something different than the net assets. See, total net assets value, of course it will change. If you see gain, which is created impact on NAV for per share. But if I talk about redemption, if you have redemption of 1000 units, so before confirming the redemption, let's say you have confirmed redemption with this value, right? You have redemption, selling of mutual fund units. So just debit the value of this one, 1000 into 12.50. So that become 12,500. Debit that unit. So remaining unit should be 9,99,000 and your net asset should be 12 crore 48 lakhs. But point here is net assets has been changed. Your redemption created impact on net assets. But if you see NAV for per shares, which is remain same post redemption also. So in short, your subscription and redemption, that won't affect on NAV. That won't affect on NAV. So if you see any question as such around it, so in general, your small redemption or small subscription request won't affect on NAV for per unit. NAV for per unit, right? That won't affect. But if you see big redemption request, or if you see big let's say subscription request, in that case definitely it will affect. The reason is if you have, let's say, big request, and if you don't have a liquid cash in the fund book, so it means fund will have to sell this investment, and selling of investment comes with cost. So that cost will affect on the value of investment, and then NAV for per share price also you might see, which will affect. So it means substantial or big request of subscription and redemption, that will only create impact on net assets value of the fund. Otherwise, small request of subscription or cap stock activity, it will not create impact on per share price. Again, I am reiterating, right? But redemption and subscription, that will create impact on net assets value. See this net assets which has been changed. So if you see any question around it, first listen carefully what the question is. Right, is this question related to the net assets value? If it is to the, let's say, net assets, of course your subscription and redemption create impact on net assets. But if let's say your manager asks question related to NAV for per shares, then you would see NAV which will not create any impact, or which will not have any impact on NAV for per share price. Why? Because assets and liabilities both are reducing in similar direction. That's what they will have no impact on per share units. All right. Okay, so redemption of schemes units does not alter its NAV. Why? Because the transaction selling happens at the NAV. All right, and the rate at which the net asset falls due to selling, the number of units falls in the same rate. Hence, the ratio of net assets and units remains the same. Suppose an investor buy 1000 units. Here we are talking about subscription, number of units at rupees same price 12.5. What will be effect of this transaction on the NAV? I am sure no. As I said, if you see same amount 12,000, it will add in the fund, right? Net assets, it will change. It was 1.25 crore, but after that 1.25 crore, so it means 1 crore 25 lakhs 12,000, right? Net assets, total net asset has been changed, but if you see number of units also which has been increased, and that's what NAV for per unit, it will be remain same. The reason is, we if you see with the redemptions, what happened, units will down or reduce, and with subscription, what happened, again units will increase basically. So here we have increased the units, so it means you are adding cash as well as you are adding units as well, and that's what that won't create impact on per share value, NAV for per share. All right, buying of the scheme's new units does not alter NAV. Again, why? Because the transaction selling happens at the NAV, and the rate at which the net assets rise due to buying and the number of units rises in the same rate. Hence, the ratio of the NAV or assets units remains the same. Cash position will change, it means total asset will change, but NAV for per share, it will not change at all. All right. And now finally, how we calculate NAV. So the formula is very simple. So let's take this example. Fund closed, fund which is at closing of the today's business, or maybe let's say trading day to day, and with the total investment of almost 15 lakhs, you can say, and cash and cash equivalent, which is 5 lakhs. So this you can add it, right? So which is total assets, and then funds liabilities, it means expenses and cost. So number of units, basically you have 50,000 units which are outstanding units, right? So total assets, funds assets, here total assets means plus to almost 20 lakhs minus 10 lakhs, it becomes 10 lakhs divided by units. So per unit value would be, which is 4. So yeah, this is how we calculate NAV in the fund business. So sometime you would see, in system, let's say like Multifund. If I talk about Multifund is automated platform, so that calculates NAV automatically. Your job is like to just book the transaction correctly. Let's say equity, bonds, debentures, expenses, income, all transactions that you need to book it correctly. If you book any transaction incorrectly, that will create impact on net assets value of the fund directly, and that's what we ensure, so that we have checked everything before updating transactions in the books of fund. So now I'll just conclude it. NAV, it means which represent the net assets, or exposure, I would say net exposure of the fund scheme, right? And yes, NAV is very important one. You would see lots of questions around NAV, and I hope this session will help you to understand what is NAV, because investors buy units of fund, mutual fund or hedge fund at current market price, and NAV represent the same. All right, because buying and selling of investment or units also, that NAV is important, and even for a tax purpose also NAV is important, and even from an investor perspective, like investor, what if investor want to know the exact value of his investment, right? So it means NAV will help investor also to understand the investment's position, current position of his or her investment, and that's what NAV is essential in this entire life.